virtual. Everybody's running for the microphones. I think everybody's here to talk about stuff that's on the agenda tonight, and nobody online other than ourselves and Access Humboldt. So moving on to tonight's agenda then. Agenda item number 1, Trinidad 2024-1, our monthly update on the Van Wyck Trail closure and progress to date to reopen it.
All right, so as you know, the Van Wyck Trail has been closed for some time while the city explored various repair options. In the meantime, the Coastal Commission has been pressuring the city to do some improvements for pedestrian access on Edward Street in order to mitigate the temporary closure of the trail. We have been meeting with the Coastal Commission monthly since the appeal back in September. They heard the appeal back in September 2023. So to that end, GHG prepared a concept proposal, which is provided in the packet for, basically mostly consists of just restriping to widen the existing walkway shoulder on the south side of the road. It'll provide 5-foot pedestrian walkway and then 2 buffer. The narrowest portion is that portion like on the south side. So GHG was proposing to widen the pavement up to the 3 feet there. We know that could have been a concern to the Ancestral Society because it's adjacent to the Chera study area. So we met with the management team last week, and then we met with the Ancestral Society yesterday. The Ancestral Society is supportive of the project as proposed. We talked about a little bit of the additional signage to guide people down that road, down the window, and then down the boardwalk to get to the beach and the harbor area. So we will be working on that. The City Council also discussed the project at their meeting last week, and they approved it pending consultation with the Ancestral Society. So and the city engineers are moving forward. There's some funding under the Highway Safety Improvement Program. The city will be doing some crosswalks, some other striping and new guardrails and some other projects around town. So there's enough funding to incorporate these improvements, I understand. So we're looking into whether anything require a post development permit. If so, that'll come to you in August. Otherwise, the city will be moving forward with those improvements. In terms of the trail itself, we've still been looking at repair options. The mayor reached out to a couple companies that specialize in trail construction repairs, and they suggested a Sutter wall, which would be a wall on the outer side that would then be filled, so as opposed to digging, and it could potentially be installed with minimal soil disturbance. And so we brought that up with the management team and the Ancestral Society, and I think they made it pretty clear that the location of the trail is the issue, and so there aren't going to be repair options in that acceptable. It suggests that the city council arrange a government meeting with the tribal council to discuss their concerns a little bit more, and that's. So we're at with that. So that's important action required.
All right, commissioners, anything for Trevor?
So what happens in, when did you say that the CDP goes away?
So the CDP for the temporary closure expires October 22nd this year. For the CDP for the pedestrian improvements, that would come to you in August. That's
Basically, they're 2 different projects.
yes. and they are independent of each other to some degree. I mean, I think that narrowest section isn't even affected by the trail closure. But it's still, I think having pedestrian access on Edward Street is important. Necessarily an alternative to the trail, but it's as well. So
I assume that there's two different funding streams for the repair of the trail, and also then for the modifications to walkways on Edwards.
that's right, because that's the highway safety improvement program, HSIP funding. So that's for roadways and it's, kind of minimal funding to do a repair of the Van Wyck Trail would be much.
So I want to make sure that it's clear to the public and to me that where we are right now is that the Van Wyck Trail in its current location is basically a non-starter for repair.
Well, I mean, that's a decision that the city is going to have to grapple with at some point. I think it is in its current location. The Yurok tribe and the Ancestral Society are not going to support a repair. So, if the city moves forward with a repair, it's, that will have to be part of the decision-making process. At this point, the Coastal Commission staff are also sort of.
Okay, thank you.
Based on their consultations with the tribe.
So I may have just missed it, when might we need to take action about that?
So if the improvements for the pedestrian improvements require CDP, and it's kind of borderline, it's pretty minimal kind of work, and it's within the right of way. Certainly the striping doesn't require a CDP. It's primarily the pavements on the top of the bluff that might require a CDP. Run that by Coastal Commission staff, because Trinidad's LCP isn't.
Yeah, so I was asking specifically about that closure, which expires on October 22nd.
Oh, okay, so
take action to.
So that we would need to, either extend the closure or do a permit for a permanent closure, or have some repair options. But
I'm sort of reluctant to ask this question, but maybe others are thinking it. If we do not extend that closure, what's the appeals process? City Council, then the Coastal Commission?
That's a good question. A denial of a project is not usually appealable to the Coastal Commission. I think the situation with the city's insurance company is such that, I don't know if it would be a staff appeal or the city council would appeal that. But I think that would be a decision that the city council would have to consider in light of, the exclusion on the city's insurance policy for that trip or reopen.
Yeah, I asked because, as contentious as some of these meetings have been, I do feel like it's a decision that should be made by someone above us, and whether that's the council or the Coastal Commission or wherever, right? There's a lot of concerned, I don't know if they're stakeholders, there's a lot of concerned parties. And I'm just wondering if there's a more appropriate venue for those more complex discussions than this.
Yeah, potentially there's the option of just taking it straight to the city council. I think we need to start, I suggested at our last management team meetings, that we need to start thinking about what the process is going to look like.
It seems like to me that there would be many parties opposed to opening the trailer, but I would imagine like spearhead some sort of appeals process is what I imagine.
I imagine that there would be an appeal at either.
I guess, yeah. One of my concerns is, and maybe this is like a bit of a slippery slope, but I think as you just noted, however this plays out, it's going to get appealed. And while I would love to see better pedestrian access on Edward Street, I don't want that to get inflated with some kind of alternative, as Richard mentioned, and that, we do this, make these improvements, boom, we've got it. It gets appealed to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission sees that there is this alternative that's already in place. Rather than not seeing an alternative that's already in place, it makes Coastal Commission makes it easier for them to permanently close the trail, which personally I'm opposed to.
There's currently no safe. I think the issue is the currently there's no safe access. And even if the city pursues repair, it's gonna take time to fund it and get that repair done. So there needs to be safe access.
Sure, yeah. I guess what I'm saying is like, I do like there being good, safe access on Edward Street. I'm just concerned that it could be used as like a tool to more easily close the Van Wyck Trail in a more permanent manner. And I guess separate from that, my takeaway from at least the Coastal Commission is that the Coastal Commission, the actual commission, would like to see a solution to reopening the Van Wyck Trail. The staff maybe has a different point of view, but my understanding is the commission wants to see the trail reopened.
Yes, well, so certainly at the September meeting at the appeal hearing, they made strong statements to that effect, for sure. Since then, though, the local staff has met with tribal representatives, and they have taken that through their chain of command of staff. I understand, I think all the way to the executive director, to discuss what that means and what their position is going to be. So staff is of the position that they will support the closure. We don't know what the commission themselves will do. Coastal Commission's an interesting body. They don't always follow their staff's recommendations.
I think no problem. Something to keep or a place to safe place to cross and down there, and I think anything we can do to increase safety is worth it. And then we'll talk about the trail. That's my opinion.
Right. I just had a couple of questions, Trevor. In the supplemental that you put out, you said that the Huron Council and the TAS have emphasized the location is not appropriate. Is that, I guess, two-part question. One, is that fairly recently been brought to our attention? And then the follow-up is, where would be appropriate? Do we have any sense of that yet?
I think one of the things that has been a frustration is that we don't necessarily understand exactly what the concerns are. I believe the Yurok Tribal Council passed a resolution, I believe, back in 2017, I want to say, when the city was looking at the previous repair. But it did not necessarily state a reason, and I think at that time we were under the assumption that it had to do with ground disturbance. And we have not been, city staff has not been privy to really additional information other than that. And but they did at this last management team meeting, you know, the tribal historic preservation officer for the Yurok tribe specifically said that the location of the trail is inappropriate. She did not elaborate any further on alternative locations, but I do know that you know, upslope property owners reported that they met with members of the Ancestral Society to look at an upslope option, and that they decided they were not going to be in favor of that. I have asked them, the Ancestral Society, to put that in writing. I have not seen that. But that's also one of the reasons why I suggested a government-to-government meeting between the city council and the tribal council, because I think the city council needs to understand the reasons why.
We don't have anything else that wasn't already said. Are there any public comments on this report specific to the Van Wyck Trail, not the actual Lingren, which will be later and well discussed?
Yeah, my name is Dick Bruce, 780 Underwood Drive here in Trinidad. After listening to staff, we're all due respect to staff. I think that a lot of citizens in town last 2017 tried to make it clear to the council, to the planning commission, to staff that we'd like to see the trail be open. I consider myself a stakeholder. I've lived in town almost 50 years. Staff continues to avoid bringing city residents into this process. I think you heard, I think back in April, there were several of us here. We're getting worn down by staff reports. It can't be done. You should have, I think, in your packets, a letter from Tom Davies and Kathleen Lake. And I didn't see that until earlier today. But I have some written public comment I'd like to turn in. So I'll give it to Trevor and Tom. I also, when we continue to hear, and this is not in my written comments, so I'm going to read it here in a second. We also continue to hear that the Ancestral Society and the Yurok tribe are opposed to reopening the trail because of soil disturbance and because of cultural resources, and it's just not appropriate. The city has done a number of repairs. Most recently, about a month ago, there were some more pipes done up down there, and I went down there and took pictures of that. And what was it, 3-4 years ago now, when the overground pipes were put in? And I was down there and I filmed a lot of that. And I talked to the cultural monitor that was down there that day. And you find anything? No, we found nothing. It's just basically full fill. And I asked Eli at that time, and one of the city council members at that time, I believe Columbus, asked for a copy of the cultural monitor's report. Oh, that's privileged. We can't give that to you. So we're just trying to, it seems like we're just being worn down by city staff to say this can't be done. And I don't believe that's true. Here's a picture. I brought this in tonight. It's from the Museum Society. And it's a picture of that area back around 1920. And I'm just going to pass it along so everyone can have a look at it. Van Wyck Road, clearly visible at that time. The area of the village is far away from Van Wyck. The only buildings in that are obviously buildings that were built at a later date. So it just seems like the city really doesn't want to deal with They just want to make it go away, and a way to make it go away, and again, all due respect to you, Trevor, let's move it to Edwards. Well, that's not coastal access, is it? You got the views, you got traffic, I don't care what you do, you're still gonna have cars and trucks buzzing by on Edwards. So that's just off the cuff, listening to this here again tonight. So here's my real public written comment. I'd like to second the public comments of Kathleen Lake and Tom Davies. It's time for the city to repair and reopen both the Van Wyck and Axel Lindgren Memorial Trails. As an almost 50-year resident of the city of Trinidad, I am a stakeholder in this process. Along with all the other residents who have been asking, in the case of the Van Wyck Trail, for years to get these trails repaired and reopened. The contention that the Van Wyck Trail cannot be repaired without costly engineering is hogwash. Simple steps, similar but much smaller in scale than what the state park has done at College Cove recently, could be done with minimal soil disturbance. If necessary, wire gabion mats backfilled with small rock, covered with gravel and soil, could level the worst slumping sections. This is city right of way, and it is past time to reclaim it and reopen it for public access. Please demand that the city council instruct staff to come up with a solution. The clock is ticking on the 6-month extension of the Van Wyck Trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment, anybody online? I also want to note that we did also receive a letter from Nita Thompson also on this topic for public comment as well. That the commissioners had and was published on the website. All right, so back to the commission. Any other questions, comments on this, or are we ready to move on to agenda item 2? We have our update.
I just had a real quick question, hopefully. In your supplemental report, Trevor, you indicated that the Ancestral Society has suggested additional signings at the intersection of Galindo and Van Wyck. Can you briefly say what that is?
Yeah, so the GHD's proposal, well, probably not, I'm not sure if it was in the description or if it's actually on the plan. Yeah, so where it says Harbor Beach with arrow sign, I believe there's another one of those proposed for down Galindo. At least it was in the written description so that people don't go down the curve of Edwards or there's no shoulder. So pointing people down Galindo, and then, as you know, the Ancestral Society also has concerns about the Galindo Trail. And so another sign would point people down the boardwalk. So, I mean, it wouldn't close Galindo, but it would encourage visitors to go down the boardwalk instead of the Galindo Trail.
Okay, so the signs that they're suggesting is directional in
Just direction.
Okay, thank you.
I said one follow-up, Trevor. Is there anything that we can do? I appreciate you suggesting to try and answer some of these questions that we're not operating out of assumptions, which is a horrible way to make decisions, right? We assume that it's a concern over this side. That's not a great plan. Is there anything we can do to help make that happen? I mean, was your suggestion well received by the city manager, the city council, or?
But I mean, it's also a little bit awkward right now with the city manager retiring, so there's going to be a new city manager. So.
But I mean, he's still our city manager until he's
Yes,
not, so
yes.
this doesn't fall back.
You know, I think, I think, Dick made a good point in terms that the public are stakeholders as well. And I think, if it was Tristan or Chris said, this is kind of above your pay grade in a sense. It's kind of above my pay grade. I think that the city council has to have these discussions. And get some public input, listen to the tribe's concerns and then, get a decision.
Didn't we already decide that? Didn't we already say that like a few months ago? The city council needs to get involved.
Yes, and that's why I think the way you require these reports to be on the city council agenda. And I think that the first meeting that this was on the agenda, there was definitely some discussion. And we provided some background to the city council. And I think the city council in general wants to see, at least at that meeting, based on the information they had, also expressed that they want to see the trail open. But it's a different council than what was around in 2017. So I think, we do need to get them up to speed a little bit on history and the different alternatives that have already been kind of discussed and some of the implications, and then move forward from there. It's just been, I know that you and the public are frustrated on the lack of progress on, not just this trail. But believe me, staff is doing everything we can, not just with trails, but there's a lot of other things going on. Councils have its hands pretty full too. So I think, now with the budget passed, the water rates passed, hopefully there's the city has to fly positions for both the water plant operator and the new city manager. But I don't think that really involves the council much, so, hopefully they can jump back into some of these other priorities.
Just to that end, Dick, I hear you loud and clear. I personally would like to see that trail reopened. As Trevor said, we conditioned the last extension on it being on the agenda to provide an opportunity for the public to comment. So I'm begging you, please feel free to come to city council meetings, have them pull it out of the consent agenda and comment there as well when you've got the audience that are the true decision makers for making the project. We're just the closure people that we decide to fix, right? So, all right, moving on. Agenda item number 2 then. Right, we're 25% done. Not in time. So. Trevor.
Yeah, so this project is rezone and change of land use designation for First Longberry Road. It's an old church structure. It's zoned public and religious. There has been a trend in Trinidad of the churches being sold off from church uses and private hands. So 3 of the 4 recently. And the 2 lower right area are basically being used as residences. This property has the church with an apartment attached to it. And the applicants would like to change the zoning to suburban residential, which is the same as the rest of the properties on the road, so that they can convert the church into a residence and have the apartment as an ADU. I believe, so there is, before we go further, I'll just bring up Commissioner Cole is about 450 feet from the property. So there's a presumed financial conflict of interest. If a commissioner is within 500 feet of the project. And so the commissioner will either need to rebut the conflict or recuse themselves. So this, at this time, there's no development proposed. The conversion of the church to a residence will need to come back to the planning commission as a coastal development permit at some point. Right now, we're just looking at the of zone at this point. it's been kind of a process to get through this. Primary complicating factor was that, once the applicant started on this process, it was discovered that there is a wetland on the property. So that delayed things, but I think we finally got everything we need. There is a wetland delineation. The proposed septic system, new septic system had to be moved because of its proximity to the wetland. There's a couple of addendums. The property lines on the AP maps and then the county's GIS are pretty far off in this location. And so just developing an accurate site plan also took a little bit of time. That was definitely a process. So basically, this is a pretty minor rezone. I would consider it a down zoning because there's fewer uses allowed under the SR zone. So there's a table 1 kind of compares the requirements between the zones. And it's consistent with the neighboring uses and neighboring properties. There's the development is not going to be closer to the wetland than it already is. And so, impacts are anticipated. The project seems to be consistent with policies of the city's general plan, as well as coastal act policies. The project is normally a rezone would be subject to CEQA, but in this case, because it has to go to the coastal commission. So in terms of process, your action would be a recommendation to the city council, and the city council would have to approve the project by ordinance and resolution, and then it would go to the coastal commission. Coastal commission didn't have any concerns or comments on the project. The CDFW, Fish and Wildlife, came out and they didn't have any additional concerns. So staff is recommending approval of recommending that you recommend approval to the city council. There's a sample motion in there.
Questions for Trevor?
Yeah, a couple, I think, quick questions, if anybody's opposed to it. Hopefully they're quick. Are there any recent precedent for rezoning PR to SR or UR?
No, not particularly. The last rezone we did was of the apartments, and that was UR to plan development. And that was a much more complicated process because the plan development allows a much greater mix of uses. So that you have to do a lot more analysis to how the lot could accommodate those uses. I think we did recommend that the owner of the other church on West Haven rezone that property to SR as well, or PD. Some of those properties along there are planned development. That is, the property's a little bit of a problem, and that hasn't happened. This one over here, the applicant, the owners talked about rezoning that onto PD and did start that process, and then but their plan sort of evolved into the Heart Center, which is a community type use, so allowed in the Peter zone. So no, not particular precedents for this.
And should we, as members of the public, be concerned about the loss of property in the PR zone? Is there any sort of detrimental consequence, maybe as far as like development of parks or playgrounds or something of that nature?
I think that could be a concern. I think the PD zone allows some types of community and recreational uses, and there are some large vacant PD zone parcels. The parcel that the Saunders Park and Museum and Library is on, that's actually zoned commercial and should be PR. The city rezoned it, but it never submitted that to the coastal commission. I mean, I guess I have not heard a large demand for, more land for uses, and certainly, the churches, there isn't demand for the churches, so. But living in the community, you might have a better idea of that.
And my last question is wetlands are essentially an old drainage channel, right? I may have missed this in the technical reports, but what did it drain?
It's odd up there. There's a lot of disturbance in that area from construction of 101. So and it looks like it does, it does drain from the property to the north, and it drains onto the property to the south. And, we didn't know that was there. But we also, the wetland delineator didn't go on to the adjacent properties.
Richard.
Just a couple of real quick ones. On page, packet page 14, under the biological resources policies, item 16 says the Humboldt County Natural Resources Department should define the geographical limits of 3 rare plants located within potential development areas. Is that a general policy, or are we saying that there are 3 rare plants within this parcel?
Oh, no, not this parcel. That's a general plan policy, and it's super outdated. The species listed, I couldn't even find that one of them exists at all. And then there's a lot of other things. But it's a general policy.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that.
And the biologist that was on, so when the applicants first submitted an application, I went out and visited the site with one of our biologists, and he's identified others in that area here. So then the applicants hired the biologist to do the wetland delineation. If she saw rare plants, she would have identified them. Joseph would have identified them when they were on the site, and then staff member from CDFW went out specifically looking for rare plant habitat.
And then one other question, and this is on the convert church to residence engineering sheet. I guess it's packet page 22. There are these, I don't know how to describe them other than like curlicues that go all the way around the developed area. What is that?
Are you referring to the vegetation? I think that's the cleared area.
Yeah, that's the canopy. Richard, here's, you can see on this is the Google Earth view. That's the canopy you're seeing. You're talking about this
Oh,
here? Yeah,
Okay, that's the canopy.
the canopy goes most of the lot.
All
Yeah.
right, I didn't see it this one.
No, yeah, there was.
Okay. All right.
Anything?
The only thing I can see where the city would be concerned is if it needed to maybe store water up there from Mill Creek, or maybe as a storage area. Would that be something that could be then, like, said if we needed in the future, even if it was zoned, different zoning, then you still, applicant could work with the city if needed?
Well, I think the city used to own a parcel up on Berry Road that was water tank storage. And then they also used to own the big parcels along Mill Creek, where their water supply was. And the city chose to sell those in the past. So I think that was.
But the city claims to still have rights to that creek.
The city does have a water right, although with the use it or lose it policies, I don't know. Because it doesn't have the riparian right anymore.
And that's the only thing I can see that is on if the city needed it for some reason, that would be my concern.
I think, the city is investigating, places for water storage. I think, but they're looking at higher, locations so that they could get the gravity feed into the city's, water system. And the problem with Mill Creek, Mill Creek could potentially be used as fire flows, but to treat the water from Mill Creek would be pretty difficult. It would probably require a new treatment plant. So I think the idea of using Mill Creek is pretty infeasible at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question, not really related to this project, but it's in the staff report. You talk about the other church to the south and southwest. It's being used as a residence. And then you go on in latest on packet page 10, you also stated the PR zone doesn't allow residential uses other than a caretaker unit. So that other one that is technically out of compliance for its zoned use if it's being used as a residence.
We've definitely talked about that.
Because that's the whole purpose of this rezoning is to allow the church to be able to be converted
Yes,
into a
it's a
residence.
second unit as well.
Yeah.
So, I think that is
Like I said, it's not part of this. I just wanted to make sure I'm interpreting that. We don't have to get into it now either.
that property owner is known for being difficult. If you're familiar with Yeehaw, sort of the commune, it's
Right.
that. So, and the property and the uses of the property have been problematic. Dealing with the owner is a little problematic. The city does not have a definition of a caretaker unit. We've toyed with the idea of defining that with a certain period of time. So I think sort of a technicality on
Okay.
that one.
Thank you. That's more than enough. If the applicant in the room, if there's anything you want to say, yeah, please. Open up to any public comment.
Hi, everyone. Nina Narell, the other applicant. I just want to say thank you so much, Trevor, for guiding us through this process. It has exceeded my expectations for complexity and money. I've never done it before, even though I read lots of articles that were like, don't buy a church unless you're ready to really go through it. And I was like, I can do hard things. And then I was like, wow, this is really a lot. So thank you. It's very complex. And as Trevor mentioned, we ran into a lot of unexpected complexity with the wetland, with the maps not lining up and all that. So thank you also for reading the packet, just even your questions. I'm like, I actually read the whole thing. I don't think I could, so thank you for that. Other thing I want to say is our hope is that this is a benefit to the community. As some of you may be aware, the church was empty for 10 years. So when we took ownership of the property, there was a lot of emergency water and creative electrical work had been done. I think by volunteers throughout the building. We had to repair like pretty much immediately. And the building was in pretty rough shape. The roof was leaking. There was a ton of rot. I think it was getting pretty close to being tear down. And you may also be aware that the alternate use that almost happened was the AT&T cell phone tower almost got put on that property. I think because it was clear it wasn't going to be a church. And there's, as you know, some churches available in Trinidad. So our hope is that we can be good stewards of it. We can be good neighbors, that we get to create more housing because there's going to be 2 units, hopefully. And yeah, so thanks for considering it.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I've got, I think, one quick question. And I'll preface this by saying I intend to vote yes, so that I don't say that.
Okay, don't freak out.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you could sort of tell us what the process of buying this parcel was like. And I want to give you a chance, since this is sort of unprecedented in recent history in Trinidad, I
Yeah.
want to give you a chance to, you know, on the record states whether it's something that would be recommended or not in this area. I think I know the answer to this question, but I just want to give you a chance to put it on record once again.
So to clarify, I think you're asking me two questions.
Sure.
One, what was the process like of buying a property?
Yeah, did you, were you?
Or even the whole kind of reason?
Well, I guess both, but I guess my question was, were you in any way sort of misled about how easy it would be to rezone that parcel?
Oh, interesting. No, our realtor was really clear, like, this is a big leap you're gonna take, so I wanna make sure you understand you're gonna have to rezone it with the city. Also, for financing it, like, we're just like regular working class people, and, so we, we weren't able to privately fund the purchase of the property. We're not developers, like, we just want to live in Trinidad. And, we were kind of willing to make a massive gamble on, like, let's just see what happens. Many people have joked with us, like, obviously it doesn't get rezoned, you'll be starting a religious institution in our community, and we're so excited for that. Which we don't want to do. So we actually, yeah, I think we had a pretty good sense of it. I don't think anyone could have actually prepared me for the actual complexity of that experience and how stressful that was and how scary it was to be like, oh shit, what if this doesn't work? We're really ruined. But we, also a lot of people have asked us, like, how did you buy it? Because I saw that property for sale, and as you may or may not be aware, you can't get a conventional mortgage on something that is zoned religious or public. It has to be zoned residential. So the way that we got the property is we just rolled the dice and asked the church, if we don't make you clean up any of the garbage, it's filled with garbage and feces. I mean, it was like really a bad mess. We don't make you clean it up. If we waive inspection, because we already know it's all ruined. The roof is ruined, the electrical is, like, all of it is garbage. I mean, it's good. Would you finance it for us and give us 3 years to rezone it so we can get a conventional mortgage? And they said, yes. As you may be aware, that 3 years has elapsed. And so they were kind enough to offer us an extension. So, like, what I recommended, ask me, like, after it goes to the city council meeting, it's gonna be, we'll see. But I think the thing that we kind of relied on over and over again is, like, in moments where it's like, pretty sure we're gonna go bankrupt and live in our car and move back to the city. We're like, yeah, but for now we live in Trinidad, so that's nice. And I think I'm interested to see, like, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for the city. I think it makes sense for the coastal commission because we're not building new property, but also it makes housing, which is an issue. So I feel optimistic, but I also think it'll be potentially an interesting precedent for, as communities, even not just in Trinidad, but in California and along the coast, how we think about and approach using existing structures that, right, we're like, people are no longer using it for the original designation. And so hopefully that's good. Hopefully we can use buildings that exist in a smart way, not let them rot. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, at least one of them.
And maybe more, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me when maybe the right answer was none of your business.
Yeah, interesting, like, I think public discourse though, like, how does this work? How do people do it? Is it worth it? What does that mean for buildings we don't use anymore?
I guess it depends on how resilient you are against things that are complex, scary, and stressful.
Yes, I think that would be a good succinct answer. Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you identify as 11? Go for it.
All right, then at this point, I'll open up to any public comment, either from in the room or online. Take a project. Seeing none, nobody's running for the microphone, nobody's raising their hand online. I'll bring it back to us. Any further discussion or anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move based on the information submitted in the application and included in the staff report and public testimony I find that the land use designation and zone change is consistent with applicable standards and regulations. And I move to adopt the information and findings in the staff report and recommend to the city council that they approve the requested amendment as conditioned in the staff report.
And I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, unanimously.
Trevor, there was a typo in that motion when you're copying and pasting.
Oh,
Yeah, Richard edited on the fly.
Just
Just a duplication of words. Approve the.
I hope that when the next church comes up, you know, that it try to make it simple or simpler for them, from not just fight, really try to work with them. Is hopefully this probably will set some kind of precedent, and we'll work together to get what we want possible.
All right. Interesting. Jeez. All right, Trevor, item number 3, CDPR 2024-08.
thanks. So this project, in a sense, it's a standalone project, but it's also kind of a continuation of vegetation management projects in the Trinidad State Park. A little bit of background and history. The park does maintain some viewing areas, vista points, and has maintained vegetation. Some of you might recall an incident in 2009 where maybe the maintenance crew went a little overboard, but there was a complaint about the vegetation removal and not having a development permit in 2009. And that resulted in some enforcement action by the Coastal Commission. State Park staff and Coastal Commission staff worked on a restoration and vegetation management plan. A few years ago, State Parks came to the city for CDP for primarily invasive species management. At that time, a much larger area than what we're talking about tonight. One of the things that happened in 2009 was some of the vegetation that had been removed was burned in the area of this overlook, and that resulted in a lot of sprouting conifers. These are native conifers that we're talking about today for the most part. It does sound like a lot of trees, but they're in a very dense stand. It's kind of an artificial germination event. They're growing pretty dense and under mature vegetation. So it's not a healthy stand to begin with. Plus it's blocking a pretty significant island from the end of the parking area and the trailheads from there, the Stagecoach Road access to the park. So as part of the vegetation management plan the state park staff developed, they are proposing to remove almost all of those conifers. There's the mature trees will remain, as well as 3 of the and then they're going to restart the mowing that occurs as needed. And then remove any non-natives that are found and then trim the brush to a height of about 2 feet. Shed, and then with annual maintenance in. So, that is what's being proposed. This is, the zoning is open space, and so vegetation removal in the open space zoning requires a use permit. It's also a coastal development permit, which is required for major vegetation removal. So the staff report analyzes the project's consistency with both the LCP as well as the coastal act. The LCP doesn't, city's LCP, just like with wetlands, doesn't provide a lot of clear guidance. So we also looked at coastal act consistency as well. There was a rare plant survey that was completed. There was also an archaeological survey that was completed for the project. No sensitive resources were found. Referrals were sent out, including to the tribes and notices. No comments from tribes have been received. So I don't know of any additional concerns. Trees that are removed, they will remove roots and replant them in areas that are being revegetated to the extent possible. Otherwise, the trees will be composted or removed to an alternative location for burning or composting. And there's protocol, they have protocols in place for inadvertent discovery of archaeological resources. So the park already has those things in place. So staff, and so the use permit findings are written in a manner to allow approval as usual. And staff is recommending approval of the project to be agreed. Answer any questions?
All right, thanks, Trevor. Any questions from the commissioners? Staff report. I had one just relating to state parks has a program in place. Should they, I understand a cultural survey was done. There was nothing found at that time, but they have a program in place. Do we have enough confidence in that? I'm not saying there's no reason not to, but I just noticed that sometimes when we have projects before us, there's a condition of approval to have a cultural monitor present, and that's not here. And I just want to make sure that whatever their system is as robust or more so than that, should there be something else found?
I think that would be a good question to the applicant. Again, I didn't get any comments from the tribe or requests for a cultural monitor in this case. I think the local state parks have been working pretty closely with the tribes in recent years, so I'm confident.
Okay. Anything else for Trevor?
Yeah, simple question. I think it's implied in here, but I just want to make sure that the trees that are being removed with the roots, they're being planted in the same park.
Yes, if we're able to replant, we would, find a place that would be appropriate within Trinidad State Beach.
Good to see you again, Michelle. So I first thought comes to mind is what do you believe will be the success rate of transplanting these trees?
Would you mind just so that we get
So at this point, the size that they're at, I'm hoping that a few of them will be able to be transplanted, but they are getting, to a point where I think it's going to be difficult to successfully remove all the roots and have a successful transplant and have them survive.
That's kind of iffy.
I mean, there's 340 trees, not the mature ones, so the small ones within 2,200 square feet. They're touching each other. It's because they were mostly short pines. I mean, you burn the cones, that's when they sprout.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, our former maintenance worker went a little zealous with crews and then decided to burn the pile, and now here we are.
I remember. And then the other question is, I know you indicated that the tree removal will be done with basically hand tools.
Well, chainsaws.
I'm talking about the ones that you intend to commence.
Oh, right, if we can, we would go through and see which ones we could remove by hand, using hand tools. If we can't get that whole root ball out successfully, then we'll end up using, a chainsaw to cut stuff back.
Okay, so, okay, I think I understand what you're gonna do. Thank you.
Any other questions for Trevor, or now that we have the applicant? That's perfect. Thank you.
I'm here to answer questions.
Yeah.
So,
With that, removing the root balls, will that create maybe soil disturbance for next winter's rain?
that could possibly, like I said, I don't know how many we would actually be able to remove at this point. But definitely we would, with the native vegetation, if that were to occur, what we could do is go ahead and mulch it and use that to help, cover up that bare soil.
You know what to do.
Got one question for Trevor and one for the applicant. In this sort of tangled web of coastal commission, LCP, CDPR stuff, if they don't perform annual maintenance in this area, are they in violation of something?
No, I think it's permission to do the maintenance is what they're asking for. It's not a condition of approval to do the maintenance. And I think they'll probably be motivated to do it because they don't want it to get to the point where it requires a permit again.
Right, so because of what happened in 2009, we waited a little while. We wanted things to cool off. We wanted both the commission and the city to see that we had done restoration, that the vegetation had grown back. And that was partly my mistake when we did the larger vegetation management plan to remove invasives across the bluff, that I should have probably incorporated this into the project description. But I was just looking at invasive species removal and restoration of the bluff. And so this is why this is on its own separate thing, is that the majority of the vegetation there is native. But there are some invasive non-natives that once we get those trees removed, we'll be able to deal with those and get that whole little section back to native plants.
I've got one more very tangentially related question, which is, since we're talking about the Pewitol viewshed, and Pewitol Island is itself sort of the centerpiece of that viewshed, just since everybody else to ask.
Yeah, and just to follow up on the last question too, is that when we talked with the Coastal Commission about the viewshed, it had gotten so many years that we weren't maintaining it after 2009 that they said that we would need a coastal development permit. And so that's what we want to do, is get us back to that annual maintenance that we always did until this incident occurred in 2009. And yes, if you see in the staff report and the document I provided, you can see how the vista went from, you could stand there and see it, to where now you can't. And we have a bench there that people used to enjoy looking at the view, looking at the ocean, and all you're looking at is a wall of vegetation. So that's definitely the main viewshed, is the island in College Cove.
So, and my sort of very tangentially related question was about what's going on in the island itself. Is there a restoration
So
happening?
that, my understanding, that used to be within the state park, but when the California Coastal National Monument program began, and we had the Trinidad Gateway, that with Trinidad Head and the offshore islands, that ended up going and being part of that entity. So I think BLM technically, I think now owns it, or even was part of that program. So even before that, we really never got over there or did much, because it's it has to be extremely negative low tide. It's very steep. It's very dangerous. So we've just pretty much when it was in state parks, just let it do its thing.
Yeah, no, I only asked because, the other major change since 2009 is that 2018 fire out there.
Right, it's really sad to see all those trees dead, and I don't know if it's because of the fire and that they possibly used salt water to put it out, or what's going on without actually getting out there, which again is a dangerous feat. So
Excellent, thanks.
And just kind of to my earlier question, that as far as cultural resources coming across stuff, same process you guys follow throughout the entire park system.
So we have a very, very good working relationship, our district, with all of the rancheries and tribes up here since probably the mid 2000s. And they review every single one of our projects. So not only having Trevor reached out to them. We have already gone through our cultural consultation with no real comments. And what it is that if we do ground disturbance, even though it's been cleared and we don't know of any artifacts or anything that possibly could be there, that if we discover something that comes up during ground disturbance, we immediately stop work. We bring in our head of cultural resources, and then from there, he takes over and talks with the tribes and does what he needs to do for protection of cultural resources. And then once that's taken care of, we work to see where we could move on with that project.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, just a comment. I mean, I like the project, definitely support it. I guess I wish that it were more expansive. And I mean, that whole headland, is being encroached by spruce and pine and things that certainly historically was more of a coastal.
Yeah,
grass.
historically, that whole bluff was grasslands. And so that was the project in the early teens that was going after invasive species. And so we had gone from two very long very large Monterey cypress when I first moved here 30 years ago. And then it ended up being about 40 small trees. So we did get those down, and we're still dealing with the cotoneaster and certain invasive species that are a lot harder to get rid of because of their root balls. But right now we don't have CEQA or permitting set up to do anything with the native species. But that is something that I would love to be able to bring that bluff back to a grassland. But
Yeah.
right now, we just don't have that in our plans currently.
Oh, totally. I get that. I just wanted to voice my support.
Yes.
All right, at this point, then I'll open up for public comment and. Yep. Members here.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Spiegel, and this is John Moskowitz, and we live at 895 Underwood, which is immediately adjacent to the site. House in 2018, after I lost my house in Reading to a wildfire, and so I'm really concerned with the defensible space behind us on the side. And we're thrilled to approve of the restoration of the Patwally Vista Point by the removal of the unnaturally dense conifers caused by bird pile. And we love the removal of non-indigenous space, and the continued maintenance sounds like a wonderful dream come true. And that we hope the park will consider doing the same down the path to the beach going southward. It's a really well-used path and park. That park gets a ton of usage. This park is a true gem. It's nicely clean. Many families use it, and the trail to the beach, and people love the huckleberry bushes, and we hope you'll keep them. It would make a big difference in fire safety for us to have the brush cleared 20 feet behind our fence, because they cleared it once and then they haven't done it again, and it's a fire hazard worry. Many people have been sleeping in the park, and a lot of problems could be averted if the gate was locked and the posted non-use hours dusk to dawn. When I wake up, I look directly at the bench. It's just right outside my kitchen window. I wake up before dark sometimes. People are coming out from having slept. And I notice if they do it once, they might do it for a month. So anyway, thank you very much. And again, we're thrilled to approve this letter.
Thank you very much.
I'm here for mutual support and I have just a couple of comments to make. Yeah, we're in support of the use permit. I think that's a great idea. It does my heart good to see that there's some action being taken by all parties to get this resolved. Walking over here from Underwood, looking out over the calm waters of the Pacific Ocean and the water sparkling, what a great sight. How much gratitude do we have for something like that? Sometimes we forget about it, right? But there's a lot of people that go to that park right next door to us, and they sit and they picnic, and that view shed is being cut off for those people. Their families are small. Blue collar families are coming over there to cook for Saturday and throw some hot dogs in the grill. And that there's just a big curtain being placed across that view shed now. And it's actually, that curtain is proceeding all the way down to Talonature Laboratory right now. It's just, a matter of time before it's going to be cut off completely. So it's not only a view shed problem, but I think it's, as Gloria was stating, it's a fire safety problem, because as you walk through there, the dense vegetation is almost like a fuel ladder. If it goes off, it's going to go right to the crown of those trees and spread like wildfire, and it's going to be a catastrophic problem for that as well, especially with the winds coming off the Pacific Ocean to do. And the last thing is, and the third thing is, like Gloria was saying, there's some nefarious activities going on over there because the vegetation is so thick, it's perfect habitat for people wanting to do things that probably are a bit on the illegal side. So, we're just a handful of houses that actually live over there and see that activity that takes place 24 hours a day, day and night. We can see what's going on over there. So, we're probably privy to some of that stuff. Law enforcement reports probably support a lot of the things that I'm saying here today, because I often see the park rangers over there. I see the sheriff, whatever the sheriff department is, I guess. They're over the time too. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks, guys. And I really want to say thanks for you guys all the time that you spend doing this planning commission stuff. I know it takes up a lot of good time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other public comment in the room or online? Not seeing any online. Bring it back to the commissioners. Any other discussion?
Any way to help out the neighbors there?
But we'll be continuing the bluff project with invasive species. So we can't necessarily right now do sort of, I guess, actually, Ron, we've always think about better maybe for planning.
Well, we don't have any current plans, but it's, good to hear that there's community interest in hearing from others. To interaction.
But we will be still maintaining and cutting down on invasive species.
That's good. Well,
Thanks. If you need any moral support, we can.
now you need your neighbors right there. Yes.
And I might have missed it. What's the timeline to get started on this?
Breeding bird season's over.
Which is
So,
roughly September.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Okay, I'll make a motion then. Based on the application materials, information, findings included in this staff report, and based on public testimony, I find that the proposed project is consistent with the city's certified LCP and provisions and regulations of the Coastal Act, and I move to make the required use permit findings and approve the project as submitted and described herein.
I will second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, no obligation to stay once your item's over. That's only for us. All right, number 4.
This is a good one. All right, so we're bookending with trails, meeting. So, the temporary closure of the Axel Lincoln Memorial Trail is expiring and staff is proposing a new closure. I did this under a new permit as opposed to an extension of the previous closure because circumstances have changed. It's really not that same, you could be erosion and emergency closure, and Parker Creek's not involved anymore. And I do want to emphasize that this has been a priority. We had a very good meeting with the Ancestral Society yesterday. This is a priority for them as well. It's a little bit of a complicated situation. Coastal Commission, we talked about it with Coastal Commission staff on Monday as well. I know they're concerned about an extensive closure. So we are working on trying to get this back open for next summer. I just don't see anything this summer. And it's another situation where, I think at this point, this is worse than the Van Wyck Trail. It's essentially, I've been down there this summer, but it's essentially a vertical drop of well, there's really no way for people to get up and down safely. And then also there's the limitation on that it is within the Tri-City area, and any soil disturbance or vegetation removal without the approval of various groups, including the lineal descendants. So it's not a real easy situation. The Ancestral Society did make it clear that they won't support improvements to the existing alignment, but they would like to partner with the city and do whatever they can to help get the new realignment open as soon as we can. They did express that they will be getting the GHG report that we've talked about quite a bit to the city. We'll be presenting that to you at the next meeting. I have seen it as part of the lawsuit settlement discussions, but it's not yet public. That's a long-term big project, and we're going to be working towards getting that implemented, but that's going to take time for design and environmental review and funding. The Coastal Conservancy is very supportive of the project, and although they lost some of their funding with the state budget changes this year, they still do have some funding, and other agencies have some funding. So Becky and Angela have been involved. I got an email from Becky today with some grant programs that might help move things forward, both for the interim and the long term. For the interim, I think we all agreed that we can't really do much more in terms of trying to figure out a solution until we get that vegetation removed from because it's just so thick. You can't see exactly what's going on at the base of the bluff. It is clear. The city manager and the city engineer went down in May to take a closer look, and there's a rock at the base of the traditional alignment that provided a gradual access to the beach, but the bluff has separated from that rock, and there's just a very narrow kind of land bridge again with this 10 drop. So, but we need to look at what the bluff looks like, in terms of anchoring something there. I think we've talked about the idea of having something prefabricated made of aluminum that can be transported in pieces down there and set up, and we just have to figure out how to get it attached. And so for the next month, we do plan on bringing another coastal development permit back to you for the vegetation removal, as well as a new barrier at the bottom to keep people from trying to climb up where the vegetation's been removed. So we'll do something similar to what's already at the base of the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail. But at this point, staff is recommending an extension for up to a year. We would certainly hope to have something in place by Memorial Weekend again, like we've tried to do in the past. But to be weather dependent, to get things open down there, I think that probably whatever interim solution we come up with is probably going to have to be removed in the winter. Down there for there was more erosion. Anyway, so that's so staff is proposing the CDP for another closure of the trail. I'm happy to provide monthly updates to you again. But I was very encouraged with our meeting yesterday. I think everybody's pretty motivated to get this trail back open.
Mayor Kelly thank you, Trevor. Mayor Kelly did reach out to me today. She has a conflict tonight as well, asking if she should be here And I offered her my opinion, but she felt that after the supplemental report came out, that really wasn't much else that her presence would add tonight. So as she is our rep from the city council, I just wanted to share that communication happened, and that was kind of the outcome of that. All right, questions for Trevor from commissioners? Staff report.
I'll start. Can you just step back a little bit and tell me why we need a CDP to do nothing?
Well, because trail closure is development, because it's a change in public access.
Okay, I'm saying some of these things because I think the public deserves some answers. And as you can imagine, both in the comments tonight and also just from people on the street, they are very, very frustrated with this whole process. And it is very, very difficult to see how we get from this mess to a solution. So I'm trying to answer some of the questions that have come up. I'm glad that you have had a chance to look at the GHD report. I was beginning to think it was not available. And by the way, I appreciate the fact that I know that staff is working very, very hard on this, and in any way saying that people don't have a great deal of passion and do the right thing. But I just feel like there are so many different directions that people want to go with this project that it is almost impossible to see a way forward. So I guess I'll just jump to the bottom. I am hesitant to approve another CDP, excuse me, without seeing any sort of documentation that gives me any idea whatsoever in terms of what a solution or solutions could be. This GHD, we have been hanging our hat on this GHD report for the last, how many months? And every month it was going to be provided to us. I completely understand if there are issues related to certain cultural aspects of the project, but why should we approve another CDP when we have no information whatsoever to go on? I mean, this report could say that it's going to take 5 years and $10 million. Why should I sign up for that? So, and I'm maybe in a very small way, not approving this tonight will incentivize everyone to come back and provide some answers, and not just to us. I think the public deserves to know what's going on, because they have been very frustrated with not only this closure, as you know, but also even more so with Van Wyck. And I just feel like we're not providing and giving the kind of information and confidence that there is a direction for this project that they deserve. So a couple of questions, Administrator. What would happen? What happens if we don't approve it? Right.
Okay, and let me just, to speak to the report, it is a long-term big project. I mean, it is years and so that's why we need an interim solution. I think that's what we're working towards with getting vegetation out of there so we can see what it looks like, get something, and whether it's, you know, is there enough material we can build something up into cable steps that you see on a lot of the trails, right? You can't do vertical, but maybe if there was some sort of railing that people could hold on to, or anyway, we talked a lot about ideas. But that report is not gonna tell you what the interim solutions. That's the long-term big picture. And I understand the frustration. You know, there's been frustration on all sides. I think this one, the city's hands are really tied, more so than Van Wyck. One, you know, this one hasn't been, you know, the insurance rep has not been down this trail to look at it, and it's not said it's going to be used. So that is one difference. But I think, and like I said, I haven't been down there this summer, but from what everyone has told me, I mean, maybe you could slide down, but you're not climbing back up at the bottom of this trail. So there's really no way to physically open it. We have talked about whether we could open it down to some point. And I think, you know, the Ancestral Society is concerned about, you know, getting people down to a point, and then they say, well, look, the beach is right there, and then, you know, scrambling the rest of the way down. But I think that's something we could talk about. So in terms of, and the city can't just do a repair and decide to, you know, not follow what the Ancestral Society is recommending because of that language in our LCP. In terms of what happens if you don't approve it, I think I think it would probably be a city council member. We'd have to have appeal that decision, and
We can delay it.
well, delaying.
So unless we approve it, you can't even move forward on doing any kind of looking at the trail. You can't move forward on it in any way unless it's approved.
No, that would be separate. So we would come next month. We wasn't ready to send out notices and stuff for the vegetation removal because we just met yesterday for this meeting. But that will be at the next meeting, and that would be a separate permit for vegetation removal and a barrier.
So you delay it a month.
Well, but the trail closure, I mean, the trail closure technically expires on August 3rd. I think the city would just be slow in removing the barriers until it gets to the city council.
So that's it. It's just the barriers really.
I mean, it's also over, the whole trail's overgrown, especially with blackberry. So I don't, you know, even if the barrier is removed, it would be difficult to get down the trail.
So just to follow up, I guess I am totally confused then. So what you're saying is that there is a proposed long-term plan which supposedly we would see next month.
Yes.
And that is, will that have options or will that be just a single plan?
It is, I mean, it's not a specific design, it's recommendations within parameters of what the, you know, ultimately the trail should look like.
So then somewhere is, let me rephrase it, is there somewhere a proposal for this intermediate repair?
Not yet. I mean, we did present, I think early spring, late winter, we did present, GHD did put together sort of a preliminary proposal for reopening the existing alignment, I believe with the cable steps. But even that is questionable whether that could be done, because you would have to build up a slope with material that's on the beach, and there's just not any material nearby right now. So then, you know, that's when we started talking about other options like this, you know, an actual stairway, you know, that's constructed out of something like an aluminum. We could have it, you know, made to specifications by one of the local fabricators. It could be in pieces that could be easily carried down by Public Works. And it could be put together down there and could be, you know, with feet that could be pressed into the sand. That would provide people an access from the base of the trail down to the beach, where the toe of the bluff is washed out. We don't know what exactly the toe of the bluff looks like right now at the new alignment. And that's one of the problems. We do know that likely some kind of bridge is going to be required in the ultimate solution. We don't know if that's the interim solution or not, to get people from the rock to the base of the real line trail. So I think that's why we decided that the next step is really, we already have a proposal, I believe, from RCAA. They do a lot of the trail construction and restoration around here. So they visited the site with us and the Ancestral Society, and put together a proposal for, you know, clearing kind of minimal, you know, with the 2 people, vegetation down there to get the trail open. At this point, we don't have any way to get people to the beach. That's what we have to figure out, but we have to get the vegetation over there so we can see the layout a little bit more.
So what seems to be a big concern with public, perhaps to a certain extent, the commission, is what is the policy of the Churai management team with respect to this trail? And what I mean by that is there a clear policy statement that this is the goal is to open this trail and to provide it for public use? And if they have stated that somewhere, it would be very useful for the public to understand that. To ensure that the public that they are confident that, yes, this may take a very long time and it's going to be lots of ins and outs, so to speak, but the ultimate goal is to do this. But as even some of the statements expressed tonight by the public, there's not a great deal of confidence that we truly understand what the policy is for the management team in terms of dealing with.
This trail is identified as both a recreational and cultural resource in the management plan. The Coastal Conservancy holds an easement over the property for public access. So they definitely have an interest in maintaining public access. It's also the designated primary access to Old Home Beach under at least 1 or 2 settlement agreements. So I think so it is in the management plan as a resource that there hasn't really been much question. Now, there's been question, you know, the Ancestral Society, there's been question over both the top and the bottom of the trail and where they are. So the top, it used to be routed from westerly location, and the lighthouse property was kind of there was a fence and a retaining wall, I think, that blocked the original entrance. My understanding is basically that original entrance is now open with the removal of the lighthouse. So I think the top is mostly where it should be, but then the bottom of the trail does not follow the traditional alignment. And it gets closer towards the actual village site, so there's more potential for sources over on that side, so the Ancestral Society has always had the position that they want the original alignment.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, I really appreciate all the effort that everyone is putting into this, and I'm just, I guess, voicing some concerns that we all have as members of the public in terms of the outcome here. Certainly understand that everybody is working very, very hard, and I personally, I appreciate it, and I know how complicated this is. Seen this since I even moved very, very long ago, so appreciate the complexity of it. But thank you for hanging in there. This is tough, I know, but I just wanted to make some issues clear. Thank you.
Other commissioners.
Yeah, I want to second what Richard said. I appreciate it. I know this is tough, especially for you, Trevor, sort of stuck in the middle between a lot of different parties. And I appreciate the hard work that you're putting in. I certainly have some concerns with this new proposal. I mean, this body has been begging or pleading with the city, TAS, TMT to come up with an interim solution to reopening the trail for the past year and a half. And every time it comes back to us and we hear, oh, we're having really encouraging conversations and we think we might have a solution. The last report we got, it was like, yeah, slam dunk. We're going to open it on July 4th. We're going to reroute the trail down. It's going to go over the rock, the historic routing of the trail. And then we find out, oh, wait, that rock's not even attached to the clipping. I mean, it's like somebody made that up without actually going down to the beach to look. That obviously the rock is not attached to the clipping. And so I feel like this body, the commission, has been operating on like, we'll just give them, believe in their goodwill and we'll just give them a chance. They say they're working really hard, but like we have yet to see any solution, intermediate or long term. We've been asking for it for, like I said, a year and a half. And I think it's pretty frustrating. And I've lost a lot of faith in the fact that like these conversations that happen every month are actually leading to anything productive. And I guess, furthermore, I mean, this GHD report that the Ancestral Society has had, I mean, in the most recent, this little addendum that we got, the TIS has expressed that opening this trail is a priority for them. But I just don't feel that they've shown that it's a priority for them. I mean, we have been asking them to work with us and work with the city on it. And, you read this summary and you just hear about delays for this reason or that reason. Oh, there's too much brush. I can't see what's going on. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of excuses and I just don't buy a lot of them. And I don't really have any questions, just a little soapbox.
I got a few things. I don't get down to the Old Home Beach as often as I should, but I was down there today. And the coastline at the top of the left seems a very similar condition to what it was a year ago. I don't know that I buy that there's been additional significant erosion that happened last winter, and maybe there's LiDAR data that support the notion that there has been significant additional erosion. And I understand, how devastating erosion is to the TAS and other parties. But if there has not indeed significant erosion this winter, I guess this previous winter, I sort of resent the idea that this is a new and emergent problem. I mean, we're really talking about the sort of same set of problems we were talking about 18 months ago. And like in the staff report, for example, you mentioned that there is, large winter storms in 22, 23, and again in 23, 24 that caused significant erosion. And, I acknowledge that the erosion in 2022, 23 was in fact a problem and potentially catastrophic. I don't like being put in a place where we have to come up with a sort of emergency solution to a problem that is indeed still 18 months old or something like that. And I think that I'm still, as I have been for some time, in favor of some very light touch solution. I think that these stairs or ramps or something that just barely touches the sand, it alleviates a lot of the concerns. And one more concern that I've got, of course, is that the coast is dynamic, and we've got these 6-7 year El Nino cycles. So maybe we finally get the trail open in time for the next significant erosion event, and then it's another half decade before we find a way from down to the beach. There's lots of reasons to be concerned, obviously. I don't think I'm doing anything new. I do have, I think, one more concrete question. Yeah. I voted no on these closures in the past because I didn't think they were consistent with policy 64, right, which obligates the city to maintain trails. But of course, the policy 64, which appears in the general plan, is rather outdated, right? Like the LMP, none of the trails, maybe that's not true. I think the Window Street trail. None of the other trails are mentioned in this. Is that true?
This trail did not exist when the LCP was written, so, but the other trails are mentioned. They're not necessarily mentioned by name, but they're mentioned in the description. Policy 64 is pretty long. That's the long paragraph one, right?
Yeah.
It is in
I got a copy of it here.
the transportation map. Shows the trails, so that the Parker Creek is on there, Van Wyck, and Long Beach, but not Axel and Grim, that was developed in late 90s.
May I ask because I've still got objection to this closure because I don't believe it's consistent with policy 64, but of course, policy 64 doesn't say anything about this trail. So I've got pretty dubious ethical waters to wade through.
Yeah, I think, and it's not an uncommon situation where you have conflicting policies, because there are also policies about closing trails that are causing issues. So, and then I think because Trinidad's LCP is so outdated, we also have to look at the state policies. But I think we also have to look at the situation. I will say, I'm not proposing this as an emergency closure, and I didn't mean to imply that the erosion last winter is the cause of all the problems. It was the erosion the previous winter. And I don't know how much worse this winter made the land bridge, but I think, there has always been, the GHD report does discuss a bridge. I think it was recognized then that a bridge was needed. It just wasn't apparent. how bad the situation was. And so that's why finding an interim solution, has been difficult. And, and I think there has definitely been periods of time where we were not able to make progress, where there, people's schedules we couldn't meet or various things, and it has definitely been. I think the Ancestral Society did express that they were hoping that the Yurok tribe would take a lead on this trail, and there has not been movement on that. And so, so now, I think they recognize that that's up to the city. I get your frustration. Frustrating.
Yeah, and like looking at the TMP, sorry, the current TMP. Be long-winded again, sorry, but it just, I agree that, rerouting the trail to its traditional routing is the ideal solution. And, I'm certainly willing to wait until that can be achieved in order to enjoy it. But we've had temporary solutions in front of us for a long time now. I feel like some of those are maybe more feasible than that. We're being led to believe, especially some of these softest possible touch solutions. So again, I recognize how sacred the whole area is. I don't want to seem insensitive. I don't want to seem unappreciative of all the work that people are doing behind the scenes, but I do think that things are, like the public said earlier, more feasible than maybe we've appreciated.
It's tempted to just say, let's leave it. Let's just not do it, because it doesn't really matter what we do at this point until we hear more information. But since we're here as a planning commission, we kind of have to, respect the city, and so if you have to keep that gate up. You could say, let's close it for another month, just to keep the gates and make sure that make staff happy and all that, but closing it for a whole year, it's gonna end up being probably closed for a whole year, but we need to come up with some interim plan. And what's that? I don't see how we could keep, we have no pressure to make it happen. So on that, what do you think from the city?
In terms of reopening it.
It's not gonna reopen. You just said you're not gonna take it. We're just sitting there spinning our wheels.
Well, I mean, I see your point in terms of getting the city council more involved and being more. I think that's kind of the strategy you're talking about.
I want to see the plan and then how we can implement the plan. Because we're a planning commission, not a delaying commission. We're trying to plan. So that's what I don't know if I vote for this, then we're gonna just a whole year. I don't like the way the message that sends to all the folks that were here tonight. But I mean, once we have a plan, then we can all start working towards it. Everybody here, everybody. And so that's what I'm pushing for. And I don't know how to do it, what to vote for, delay. I don't like the idea of a whole year, but it would probably will end up being a whole year closed. I mean, unless we can come up with some interim plan.
You have a plan for a plan?
What's that? Yeah, what is that? I don't know.
I have a couple, I mean, I absolutely, Tristan, you said eloquently, I had a note here, it's just, we've been abundantly clear, bring us an interim I'm fully in support of realignment with this to the ancestral pathway. Makes all the sense in the world, 100% behind that. But, procedurally, I understand you're presenting this as the request for a new CDP as opposed to an extension of the existing one. By doing that in that way, is there any intended or unintended changes to time tolling, appeals processing, that kind of stuff? Is there anything that this makes easier or harder by reintroducing this as something new as opposed to an extension of the pre-existing one?
That's a good question. And I did talk to Coastal Commission staff a little bit about what the appropriate procedure would be. One of the things that actually surprised me with the first closure and extension is I assumed that after our first closure, the extensions would be appealable to the Coastal Commission. And apparently they're not. And so it seemed a little odd to me that there could potentially be indefinite serial extensions for one without needing a new permit. And so that's sort of why I went to the Coastal Commission, talked to them. We talked through a little bit about it. And I think, they recommended that conditions have changed. I mean, it's not necessarily the same reasons for the closure now as it was. So similar, but not exactly the same situation. And I also wanted to, so this opens it up again for appeals. So I thought that was important. Also sending out notices again. So this is a little bit more of a robust process with more noticing. And the appeals process associated with it.
In the packet, you talk about in your summary here, your staff report, that back in October, one of the times we directed city staff to develop short-term recommendations and bring them to the TMT. Can you refresh me? Did that ever happen? Were there any true, here's this temporary thing developed and it was taken to the management team and discussed at a management team meeting? Or did that never happen?
Yeah, so there was that, kind of brief proposal that the GHG put together that was presented. There was a bit of a breakdown in communication at the end of last year, beginning of with the management team, but yes, we did meet with them, talk about that proposal, and it was, they're not going to support, that proposal was repair of the existing alignment. And they're not going to support that at all. So then we're kind of back to square one with how do we open, then we started to develop a plan to open the realignment on an interim basis.
Okay.
I just had a thought. I mean, I don't know whether it makes sense. Rather than propose a coastal development or an additional closure, why aren't we pursuing the CDP to clear the brush so we really have a clear understanding of whether or not this new approach is even feasible?
That's what we're going to do next month.
Why don't we do it? We can't do it tonight.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Well,
why can't we? Why can't we amend the CDP to say that we approve it only if, let me think about that.
Because this was agendized as a new CDP.
No, that's just, I think we got caught in that. But if we modified even the new CDP, I'm trying to think of,
so just a little bit in the process, it was we had, it wasn't until I think the end of May that, the engineer determined that it's not gonna be a simple temporary bridge, during a site visit with a closer inspection. And then Eli was on vacation for weeks or so, and it takes time to schedule a management team meeting. So that's really what we've been doing since then. And, we didn't move forward with the vegetation removal because we were hoping maybe we could just do something on the existing alignment. Again, proposing that. So, and then, it came out from the meeting yesterday that, the Ancestral Society really want to work on that new alignment. And so we talked about some various solutions, but we all recognize that we've really got to get the vegetation out of there so we can see it.
So just to be clear, you're saying that next month that we'll see a CDP for vegetation clearing.
Yes.
Then I'm willing to amend this CDP to say it's only good for a month, not 1 year. And see the CDP next month with the plan for vegetation removal. And then based on the progress that is accomplished under that CDP, come back and see whether or not we're willing to the CDP.
Or we could include a longer extension as part of the next CDP as well. I don't know.
Which then now we know bypasses the appealable process though, which.
For that, true, yes, yes.
Why, do you know why the city has decided not to at least manage the vegetation on the existing trail for the last year and a half and just let it become so to the point where, you know what I mean? It used to be part of annual maintenance. That direction.
It's probably seen as a waste of time if the public can't go down there. I think there has been some issues with people camping and trying to get down there anyway. Last time I was there was a tent on the trail, on the little pullouts of the trail. So I think the idea is it's turned that way.
Were you present for the site visit, or have you talked to the city engineer? Because I guess I'm frustrated, this rock erosion at the base. I go down to Humboldt Beach periodically. It's not a surprise that it's not connected. At least it wasn't to me that it's not connected to the bluff anymore. So it's disappointing to hear that in May, we, the greater city entity, we learned that, oh, whoops, there's more required here. What else needs to be inspected so that we can make sure we have all the information or as much as possible? Because it's this death by 1,000 little pieces of frustration.
I was not at that site visit. I was at the ones earlier in May, in April with RCAA and the Ancestral Society. I think that site visit might have just been Eli and Steve Allen. I was not there. I don't know exactly the answer to that, and I can't guarantee that once we get the vegetation out, we don't go, oh, look at that, now there's something else to deal with.
But I feel like this instance now, which is being presented, or I feel like is being represented as, this is the big new hiccup that we've got, is this land bridge, right, that we thought was there. I think if the right entities and people had been present for that site visit, perhaps could have said, oh, and by the way, this is where we plan to connect point A and point B. And maybe the city engineer could have gone, wow, well, there's not really a connection point that I could sign off on as an engineer. We better start talking about that now, right? And so I'm not sure the right people are in the room, so to speak, when these, and I don't know what meeting action gets in the way of noticing and public, I don't even know.
Yeah,
I feel like that is only compounding this problem further every time somebody else comes in and looks at something with their perspective, which is important to the discussion. And it's now new information for everybody else to begin to navigate through.
I absolutely more efficient. Sure. I think the first time we all met at the site, we couldn't even walk down the trail because of the limits, so we had to just get Public Works to trim it just to get people down there. And I think, there were probably some assumptions made and maybe some people who didn't look as closely enough, they assumed things were similar to the last time they had looked at it or whatever it was. I don't know. But you were right,
I'm wondering if at this point we should just go ahead and open to public comments. We make sure we cross that unless there's anything else from the commission at this point, because it'll come back to us for some more discussion. So anybody in the room or online have any public comment on this issue? I know there were, again, the letter from Anita Thompson and then also from Kathleen and Tom as well spoke to this issue. I'm not seeing anybody in the room or online. All right, just want to make sure process wise we had that in there. So what, and I guess I'll speak to your kind of concept because I had wrestled with that too. Like, what about another month, and I struggle with that because 6 months, a month, 3 months. What's
Death by 1,000 CDPs.
right? What again, I'm going to pin my hope on. I'm going to go face my fellow citizens in town that I speak to as I walk around and see on the trails. And yeah, we're hopeful again. And then that's where I'm having a really hard time with that concept. And I would almost rather that be the city council's discussion and decision.
Well, that kind of goes to what I think we were all kind of trying to understand, at least I think, is what if we denied the seat? What's the impact, the overall plan? And tell me if I'm going down the wrong path, Trevor, but the CDP runs out, the current CDP runs out, you said August 3rd?
Yeah, that's.
If we stayed any decision tonight, that would be a period of about three weeks to the next planning commission meeting that the city would be liable, if you will. But in August, hopefully we would have the brush CDP in front of us. And ideally, it would be really great if we had some sort of indication as to what some alternative interim fixes might be. Is that possible?
Well, I think we have to get the brush out. I mean, I think I've thrown out some ideas that we've talked. I think some sort of lightweight prefabricated structure seems like the best idea to me that I've heard so far. It's just what that structure is going to look like and what it's going to attach to.
Well, I really appreciate and have always respected GHD and still do, but they're engineers. I'm an engineer. I know what they want to do. And I'm wondering if we're looking in the right direction for the kind of light approach that we're struggling with. And I know we had RCAA involved and they're good at that sort of thing. And I guess the mayor was looking for other companies that would maybe provide some input. I don't know if we ever pursued that any further, but I think we're at cross purposes in terms of trying to figure out what might be some of the light touches that we're trying to get a hold of. GHD's going to, bless their hearts, they're going to spend a lot of money. because that's what they do. And respectfully, I say that because I understand entirely how engineering works. But that's not where we're at right now.
I think that's an excellent point. I think when Steve realized it was gonna require a bridge, Eli told him to come up with a proposal or a cost estimate, and it was $40,000 just for a study for the alternatives. And I think that's probably for a permanent type of engineering bridge. But I think, definitely Steve's been involved in these conversations. He understands the issue. I think it was Gabe's idea for the prefabricated stairway, actually, and I think Steve's really gotten behind that. And maybe it's not something that's engineered. I think we need to talk to RCAA for ideas when we're out there. I mean, they, when we were on site with them, for example, there's probably some sort of creek or drainage, that wet area that goes through there that will have to be bridged. And RCA does that all the time, with planks, with a railing. I mean, they knew exactly what they would do in that situation. So I think that's a really good point. We need to keep them involved in what is the best interim solution. I think the other idea, which we brought them in early in the process, to look at more like the erosion control, is the Europe tribal natural resources program, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And get their trail folks to get it and provide some ideas first.
Yeah, they are pretty knowledgeable. They put together a whole, basically trail design, well, not a whole trail design, but will definitely involved in being able to do a lot of things with Strawberry Rock. And they have the wherewithal to do that.
So there was one of the interim solutions that has been entertained is adding cable steps at the current alignment. And you had mentioned earlier that, it would need some bolstering at the base of the cliff, we'll call it, in order to support those steps. And you mentioned that, I guess Steve thought that there was insufficient material down there to do that. I'm personally going to push back on that as not an engineer, but you go down to the beach and there's boulders, there's cobbles, there's logs, there's all kinds of stuff we could use to bolster the base of that, to lay the cable steps down onto, and you could avoid the aluminum steps. That is a feasible solution. And if they do it at other coastal access points south of here, so I'm not buying that. Oh, that's not an option. So I want to keep that one on the table, and it seems like the simplest one would be.
I think that should be an option we look at, but on the new alignment,
Sure, we're there as well.
That to me is really exciting, that the new alignment is the plan. So we are getting somewhere. That's what I think hung up everybody is that it couldn't be fixed to the old and now we are going to a new alignment. And now we just figure out what we do after it's cleared.
I guess backing up to the big picture here, Richard had the idea of sort of tying this to the vegetation removal CDP. I don't really want to tie them together because we don't know what the vegetation removal CDP is going to yield. But also, I really think that we need to elevate this or escalate this, and we've just sort of been, approving these closures, and every time we approve it, it just gives everyone it's oh, okay, great, now we can relax and start thinking about maybe reopening trail, but like if we deny it, it really puts the pressure on the city, TAS, TMT to like, okay, the planning commission's taking this more seriously now than they were a year ago, and they want this thing open. And like, I don't want to be obstinate and just like, oh, deny the project and reopen the trail as is. But I mean, if you think about the trail, like that trail came about once upon a time. Somebody found a way down to the beach there. And like, if you reopen the trail, somebody will find a way down to the beach there. And like, that could be a solution. Maybe not one that the city's insurance company likes, but it does reopen the trail. And like, those who want to use it can use it. I mean, that's what we have been doing forever. You find a way down where you're trying to go. And like, I know there's a lot of sensitive resources there, but finding the way may or may not actually impact those resources. And yeah, thank you.
I will say to that, I think that, well, I know the city staff, and it's been expressed by the Ancestral Society, they have heard the planning commission. They understand concerns and desire and pressure. And I think we're pretty motivated. I think they're pretty excited about actually making some real progress. I think they're disappointed that the Yurok tribe didn't make some progress, and I didn't understand that that's what they were waiting for. So I think, the city and the Ancestral Society are very motivated, and I think they do have gotten the message, regardless of what.
So just to reiterate one more time, because I'm still slightly confused, but let's say we stayed this tonight and we handled it next month, we would see 2 CDPs, correct?
Well, I guess I would need to, I think the city manager and probably the city attorney would need to have a discussion about whether we bring it back to you next month or whether we take it to the city council.
Which one? This one?
Yes, the closure, yeah.
So, sorry, will the vegetation need to be a separate CEP? Because it's a separate project, right? We can't just come back and modify whatever, theoretically, this one were to get, say, a month on it tonight, right? We can't just then come back and then modify it to now include vegetation management, right? It would need to be a new.
No, I think, I could come back with a new permit next month that was for vegetation removal and continued closure, but I think it's cleaner to keep them separate.
Yeah, agreed.
But I don't think.
And my follow-up to that then is that a new permit has to come to us first. It can't just the city attorney and city manager couldn't say, well, we're just going to take everything and bypass our planning commission now, right?
No.
It's still this one if we vote no.
I don't know all the legal implications. The city council has delegated their authority to you, and they can always take it back. And I don't know under what circumstances that can occur. But what it would be is an appeal of your denial.
Right.
Yes.
But assuming, I guess my clarifying thing is that assuming then we come back next week, or excuse me, next month, with the vegetation one, that unless something dramatic were to change in the city council, disbanded the planning commission or took the authority back, which I think would be a bit extreme, right? Within their rights to do so, please do so. Just kidding. that would then procedurally still need to come to us then as a new one first,
Yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
sorry.
And I don't,
Just to your point of view, you were kind of like, where would the city manager and city attorney go?
Yeah, you do have some authority to modify permits like tonight, but I think adding the vegetation removal is probably a stretch for, being advertised as a trail closure.
No, I mean, it wasn't even noticed with that.
Yeah.
So that I think makes a lot of sense, but so it seems to me the options are, we say no and let it go to the city council. And
Yeah, like I said, I think, I would have to have a discussion with Russ and Eli about, do we appeal it to the city council so that there's action a week, one, that's a week sooner for the action. And two, I think, you guys have expressed frustration that, some of this really should be a city council discussion, level discussion. So, or whether the procedure would be better to come back with a CDP. Now, you would have to, I believe you would have to deny without prejudice. Now, I don't, because normally there's a reason, you can't just come back with the same permit application over and over again if it gets denied. I'm not sure we actually have that written in our ordinances, but that's normal procedure is if an application's denied, you can't just come you have to wait a year usually. But if you deny without prejudice, then you can come back anytime.
so again, why can't we just stay the decision?
I mean, not vote. Continue it.
Delay action, right?
Continue.
Continue the hearing. I'm just looking at the packet here. It says delay action, continue the hearing to obtain further information in this case.
You could continue the hearing. I imagine
It still expires August 3rd, right?
still expires August 3rd. I don't know whether a continuance is appealable. But yes, you could continue the hearing, yes.
I really heard you, Trevor, saying that that staff has heard our frustration, that the chair I have heard our frustration, that the management team has heard the frustration. Speaking for myself, I don't feel that the city council, necessarily the city manager, has heard my frustration. And so we've got almost everybody, I feel like I've got almost everybody in the room aware of my frustration with this process. And I don't know what other tool I have available tonight other than to deny this and force it to them to at least make me feel comfortable that I have their attention. Because another month, another is just what we've done every time, or what I voted yes for every time. And I only voted yes at the last meeting because of that condition about the reports, right? And those types of things. That's sorry. But that's kind of where I am right now, I guess, just to put that out there.
Is there a mechanism where you as chair of this commission can write a memo? Is there something that's actionable when you send a memo to somebody?
If you guys direct me to, I can absolutely write something on behalf of this commission.
Right.
But I don't.
It's certainly, I'm sorry. go ahead.
No, I don't know what effect that would have other than, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we deny it, we definitely have to go to the city council meeting and have this same discussion with them, fortunately. But I mean, that's the only way you're going to get any attention. And whether it's demo or if it's in person, but we have to make it very clear our position and the reason, a rationale for denying an extension or denying a new CDP for closure.
But for a short-term plan. You align it.
But again, it's separate. I mean, that's a separate discussion because we're already on track to see the CDP for the removal of the stuff. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I mean, but that's just investigative. Like,
I know, I know, but I think this is the message that is missing with the city council. Is that you guys are doing this at a snail's pace and you're doing one little thing at a time. And every time you have a hiccup, you bring it back to us. And we have to figure out what to do.
That's the mess. But a short-term plan.
Which we've said for a year and a half. That's my,
No, we were saying on the existing alignment.
we were just saying.
I didn't say personally, I didn't say where I wanted it. I just said I wanted it temporary.
Now we have a plan on the new alignment. All we gotta do is figure out how to put steps.
But just to clarify the timeline here, you mentioned years and millions. That was for the final completion on the new alignments, right?
Don't quote me on that. I mean, it depends, but that is for the ultimate, what recommendation for what they want to see with it.
Is there reason to believe that a temporary solution will also be years and millions? Or is there hope that this could be literally, I mean, we've heard this before, right? With maybe naive amounts of optimism that these things can be achieved in a year. But is there really truly reason to believe that 1 year from today, the temporary path on the new alignments will be finished?
I think so. I mean, again, it partially depends on what we find, but I think the biggest hurdle on an interim alignment is probably going to be funding. But we're talking probably more like in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, which is something the city council, I think, would be pretty straightforward to authorize. To speak to what you were saying, Aaron. I mean, I do think Eli has the message. I'm not sure what more the city council can do other than the funding. Like I said, staff, we are doing what we can. There's not a whole lot more we can do. Putting this on, having monthly hearings, or, putting this back on the city council is gonna take more staff time, which then takes away from other things and continuing to work on this. Out there. Just as a suggestion to consider, I understand, being hesitant on the year-long closure. A month, we're not gonna have a solution, we're just gonna have the vegetation removal. What about a closure for 3 to 4 months? A request to make a presentation to the city council on their agenda and from the planning commission.
But we've been there, done that already.
But I don't think I provided a report, we put it on the agenda, but I don't think they heard this impassioned discussion. They didn't hear this impassioned discussion.
Well, I'm sorry, they didn't.
They can watch the tape. Just this agenda item, they have the ability to do it. They're members of the community to do that. It's a choice, right?
And unfortunately, 3 months extension puts us right into election and a new city manager. So that's, in my mind, a non-starter. 2 new. I guess my point is that, yes, that's an interesting suggestion to, instead of giving a year, say 3 months, whatever. But I don't think that's because of the transition of staff and city council. And I don't think we're going to accomplish much in 3 months.
But I mean, I think in a 3 to 4 month period, I think we could come up with a proposal, whether we have a design ready to get to you for approval, I don't know. But on the other hand, maybe the timing is good for sending that message to a new city manager and new council members.
So ideas to move forward.
I mean,
We're all kind of
I
same
think
place.
if we approve a closure for whatever, 3 to 4 more months, we're going to be in the exact same discussion in 3 to 4 months. Maybe we'll have some more information, but nothing at the trail is going to change in the next 3 to 4 months. Nothing at the trail is going to change in the next 6 months, probably next year, or next 9 months anyways. At least nothing that the city's not going to do anything physically down there in the next 9 months. I'd say there's little to no chance of any physical work happening in the next.
Oh, except for remove the vegetation.
Except for removed vegetation, which isn't.
That is, if we approve that city.
Right, which doesn't really, which may or may not.
Short-sighted to not after we said we want to help the action.
Trail be reopened, yeah.
But I heard that if it did kick to the city council, there's a possibility of funding. And I'll take the funding. At least that would maybe help them see the urgency to do throw some money at that trail.
Well, I think, what I was saying, it has to go to the city council eventually, or, to talk about costs and funding. What I was saying is, that's their, I don't know what more they can do. I mean, they can't.
Well, they can vote.
They could vote, but they can't create more time in a day.
But I mean, a denial by us tonight doesn't preclude any of the other things from continue to happen,
No.
right?
No.
Still comes
No,
back for
it's just-
CDP, for vegetation removal. They can still proceed with management team meetings to pursue. I mean, I certainly hope, I'm grateful that we are going to see it in August. I would hope that the city council will also see the GHD report in August. That would make also a large amount of logic to my way of thinking, but
The only thing it takes, so like I said, it takes staff time.
no, I'm not unappreciative of that. Yeah.
There's a possibility that staff proposes or enacts an emergency CDP and the council doesn't have to act on anything. Is that true? Like if we deny it tonight?
That has to come back to us though eventually, right? The emergency within 90 days or something, right?
So, an emergency is, defined as a sudden and unexpected and unknown occurrence. So I think we're past beyond that at this point.
I mean, I'm not saying that you would, but it would sort of undercut the entire intent of the discussion and possible denial if you were able to issue an emergency CDP anyway.
I hear that, but I think being able to go before the council and either collectively, individually saying, hey, take note, you just got a 5-0 or whatever, a resounding, a big change in position from your planning commission who you delegated this authority to. Might want to take some serious notice of that, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I'm sorry, but I think it's a reality that staff is going to have to be working pretty diligently along with us and hopefully the city council, regardless of which direction we go at this point. This is just fact of life really at this point. You know, I appreciate that it takes away. And by the way, that should be part of the message that's sent to the city council. That the continuing delay on this costs some money in staff time
Costs money and it costs,
and delay in other projects.
Shifting of priorities, right? Something else isn't going to get done because this has to, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of reinforce that, I mean, forcing them to actually think about it and vote is very different than just them getting a report and then tape whatever, discussing it if they so choose and then moving on. But like when they have to actually make a decision, that puts a little more stake on the table.
And provides an opportunity to hear from public
Yeah,
directly as well.
Right, exactly.
So I'll reiterate my grounds for my previous objection to these closures, which per the staff report, it says policy 64 of the Trinidad General Plan requires that the trail system be marked and maintained for use by the public. I don't think that closure of the trail, even in search of a long-term solution, counts as maintenance. That would be my opinion that'd be my rationale for voting no. So it would help me sleep at night. Sure. That's why I would vote.
The ground, so to speak.
Correct.
Yes.
And in addition to those grounds, on page 507, right in the middle, Coastal Act 30211 states development shall not interfere with the public's right of access to the sea where they are acquired through use or legislative authorization, including but not limited to the use of dry sand, et cetera. And then the statement, this temporary closure will not interfere with the public's right to access the sea because it is short term. And there are other coastal access points in and around Trinidad. I cannot make that finding. That's for the grounds for now. I understand that. I guess to me, like interfering, it's either interferes or it doesn't. And if you're closing a trail for any amount of time, to me, that's interference. Maybe to some different degree of that, but.
I would suggest maybe you also include a finding about lack of progress on a solution so that if this does come to you again and we're close to a solution, you don't have this necessarily as a precedence.
What would be the precedence?
Well, this finding that the closure is not consistent with policy 64 or coastal act section 301.
From my perspective, I think any revised proposal that includes any maintenance aspects will then be something more consistent with policy 64. But because here there's nothing about clearing the existing trail or repairing steps or even investigating how to repair steps, I can't say that there's maintenance included here.
And it might be a long shot, but this policy 64 says that because the closure is only temporary, and we could certainly make a case that would suggest that this is hardly to be deemed a temporary closure when it's been closed for what, 2 years?
When was the initial emergency CDP, Trevor?
February 2023 and then the follow-up.
So a year and a half.
Yeah. Right. So. Here we are.
You can still probably use this same motion, you just put nots and denies in there instead. Not find, not. And I would also suggest that you deny without prejudice. But, you know,
Okay. I'll make a stab if anybody is. Else is raring. I'll make a stab at this.
Where would you suggest we include the prejudice phrase?
I was gonna do,
Just want to make sure we're all.
At the last phrase, and deny the project without prejudice as described in this.
all right, then I will make a motion based on application materials and information included in this staff report. And based on public testimony, I find that the project is not consistent with the city's certified LCP and other applicable regulations. Specifically noting a lack of demonstrable evidence of or reports of substantial progress, of anecdotal reports of progress, not consistent with definition of temporary closures and temporary restriction of access, not consistent with policy 64, maintenance of trails. This trail has basically been abandoned. I move to deny without prejudice the project as described in the staff report and as conditioned therein.
I'll second.
Those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry, staying aye is essentially voting for denial, correct?
Correct.
Aye.
Yes. You are approving a motion to deny. Yes, all right. All right, passes unanimously 5-0 to deny this permit request.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Where are we? I gotta find my note sheet here, the agenda. All right, commissioner reports. Anybody have any reports as a commissioner?
Just have one comment. Thing. Notice in the paper this week, let's pronounce this wrong, I apologize, Resignini Rancheria is changing their name. I forgot what the new name is, but it's not valid, I think, until 2025. I just want to recognize they haven't changed, so we make sure that we honor that.
All right, anybody else? Okay, staff report, Trevor. What might we see next month, Trevor?
So we got through the REAP grant tasks, I think successfully, or at least partially successfully. I don't know if you've seen the FAQs on the website. I'll send you guys links. We also have some new application forms, but we want to have a chance to present those to the city council before implementing those. So that was REAP grant. And then the city's new website does have a really nice sort of FAQ format where it's all the questions and you click on it and then it expands to show you the answer. And Jennifer's going to be working on some for the OWTS program as well. I did some for land use zoning and that sort of thing, application. So can I cut a tree? Can I build an accessory structure? You know, so those sorts of things. So that's very good. And then the OP, so that was a push in May to get that done, and then in June, it was the OPC grant to get that done. I didn't have as much time to work on the LCP portions, but I did, I think I put together some good recommendations, policy recommendations from that, resiliency plan. And started to draft some policies for the LCP. From Coastal Commission recommendations and from other LCPs, so, that's some progress towards the safety element, which is one of the two outstanding elements that need to update. So that was good. And then, I don't know if you heard, but we also use that grant to apply for another coastal resiliency planning grant, for, we call it the Edward Street, resiliency. I forget exactly what it was called, but it's basically focused on Edward Street, primarily between Ocean and Hector, but also really, it also includes Wagner and Van Wyck, particularly for stormwater drainage. So it's going to be, I'm excited. I really hope we get it. That was through Office of Planning and Research, and it would involve some, modeling of the bluff and more monitoring of the bluff to look more specifically at the movement that's been occurring, and installing some more inclinometers, and doing some like drone surveys of the bluff for sort of some 3D modeling, because it, the slide this last year didn't encroach back into the street as far as we can tell, but it dropped a lot. So that slide is still moving. And then looking at kind of options for retreating Edward Street with, one way traffic. So doing some traffic studies too, and looking at some designs for creating, one way traffic between maybe Ocean and Hector, with pedestrian access. The real problematic point is going to be that between Hector and Van Wyck. Anyway, I'm excited about that grant. And now I'm focused on the LCP. You have a couple more pending applications. So yeah, there'll be a sort of a small deck, a remodel project on this agenda on the. Okay. And potentially Edward Street pedestrian.
And maybe vegetation, CCP, right?
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I got a couple too.
Once you ask questions first, Lot.
Or one's a suggestion with the FAQ section. I think that would be a great opportunity for the city to actually send something out to those of us that registered on the website. It's not been utilized since I don't even know, but I said, yes, please message me important information. So maybe test that and get the word out to people.
Yeah.
And then will we be seeing the ADU ordinance coming back before us in the near future?
It's on my list. Yes. So the REAP and the OPC grant, sort of getting that done, that work done, set a lot of things aside. So right now I'm working on trying to finish up the LCP amendments for the codification certification. Getting those to agree, so that we have the right numbering system. And then that same application would also include the reasonable accommodation and those housing definition updates that we did. It's been a couple of years now that you guys saw that probably. So I'm gonna get those to the Coastal Commission and get that going. And then I'm gonna get back to the AD ordinance. It's pretty minor what I need to do, and I really want to get it done by the end of the year before the state changes the law. So yes, those are also those.
Cool, okay, thanks.
Your question was my question, but I was Are we waiting on like CDH or Coast Commission for their input?
I have to just, there's a couple of minor changes I have to make to the ordinance, but I think the main thing I have to do is sort of write up a justification for where the ordinance deviates from state law before getting into these.
Yes. Future agenda items. I wanted to kind of take the temperature of the planning commission. We've talked about it, I feel like, but we've not ever acted on it. And that is the concept of a land use acknowledgement. As part of at least our agenda. I feel like it's, in my opinion, long overdue. There's a very common practice and meaningful, I think, gesture. So I wanted to see if that was something that there was interest in us doing as a body. Having at the beginning of our meeting on our agenda. The council.
I think, so I mean, I could certainly easily put that on the agenda. It would be, I think that's something you could move forward with at any time, but it would be great if maybe someone might take it up to do a little bit of research and make a proposal for what that might be.
If there's willingness, I'm happy to put some research in and find some examples that are already in use in our area.
Is that something we can just do instead of putting on this
Okay,
list?
yeah.
Yeah, I would support that. I mean, definitely want to vet that with travel parties.
Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, but yeah.
The reason I asked about the city council area, to be honest with you, I think that's where it should start. I mean, we can help them. But I mean, I think they should proclaim that first. But that's me.
I don't think there's any reason for you not to. It's a message, but yes, you're right. It should start with the city council. And Tristan's right too. We should vet that.
Being especially relevant to us, land use planning, unceded land. So I agree with everything that's been said, but that's probably worth reiterating.
So on the agenda, what's the?
I think, let's not put it on August, because I think we do need to vet it a little bit. Yeah. But if you want to do some research, maybe we could look at what some of the local other bodies say.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. Once I gather those, can I get them? Are you the best person to kind of help the vetting process, or what do you think would be the right?
I could certainly, yes, I could help disseminate the, some sample language, yeah. Sample language.
That's all I have. Anything else for future agenda items? All right, in that case, we are adjourned.